Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I will analyze the case of Randall Miller and the Midnight Rider train collision. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Randall Miller was born on July 24, 1962, in Pasadena, California. Both his parents were professors. Randall went to college where he studied biochemistry, but dropped out to pursue a career in acting. His acting career was unremarkable. Eventually, he went back to college and earned a bachelor's degree and a master's degree. Randall worked as a director and achieved a low level of success, which was consistent with his level of talent. He was never involved in a production that was commercially or critically significant. In 1999, Randall married a woman named Jody Savin. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. In 2013, it was announced that Randall Miller and his wife Jody planned on filming a biographical drama film titled Midnight Rider. This film was about a musician named Gregg Allman. On Thursday, February 20, 2014, there was supposed to be a camera test in the small town of Doctortown, Georgia, which is in Wayne County. The first day of actual filming was scheduled for Monday, February 24. About 12 crew members from the production were involved in the camera test in Doctortown. They had permission to film on property owned by a paper products company. Running through the property, there was a CSX railroad line, which included a railroad trestle bridge above the Altamaha River. On 2 occasions, the production had requested permission from CSX to record on the bridge, but both requests were denied. Despite these denials, Randall assured the crew that the production did have permission to be on the bridge. Not long after arriving on the property, it became clear that Randall had planned on shooting an actual scene for the movie, despite the earlier claim about this being a camera test. The scene involved a dream sequence. A heavy metal hospital bed was placed across the railroad tracks on the bridge. The actor William Hurt, playing the role of the musician Gregg Allman, was in the bed. His job was to sit up and look at another actor playing the role of Gregg's brother. William wasn't feeling too safe being on the bridge and even asked how long they would have to get off the bridge if a train was spotted coming toward them. He was told they would have 60 seconds. This dream sequence wasn't supposed to be a nightmare, but that is exactly what it became. At about 4:30 p.m., as the crew was filming the scene, they heard a brief but alarming announcement over the two-way radio. This announcement contained one word: train. This was in reference to a northbound CSX freight train that was barreling toward the bridge at 56 miles per hour. The train, which comprised 2 locomotives and 37 freight cars, was making a trip from Savannah, Georgia to Manchester, Georgia. The train operator activated the horn 26 seconds before reaching the bridge, but did not activate the brakes immediately due to concerns that the train would roll over and crush people standing next to the tracks. 6 of the crew members scrambled to get off the bridge, while 6 others stayed on the bridge walkway because they did not have time to escape. These people grabbed onto the steel girders, hoping the train would not run into them. When the train reached the bridge, it slammed into the metal hospital bed, which had been positioned on the tracks for the scene. Upon impact, the bed broke apart and the debris struck several crew members trapped on the bridge walkway. A 27-year-old camera assistant named Sarah Jones was one of the people struck. The debris from the bed knocked Sarah into the path of the train, which resulted in her death. In addition to this fatality, 7 other crew members were injured. At 4:37 p.m., 3 911 calls were placed. After transporting injured crew members to a hospital, an investigation into the cause of the tragedy was initiated. Ultimately, investigators concluded that Randall Miller and his crew did not have permission to be on the tracks. Most of the crew members were not aware of this, having been misled by Randall into believing that everything was fine. A train would definitely not come down the tracks when they were filming the scene. On July 3, 2014, Randall, his wife Jody, and a producer named Jay Sedrish were charged with involuntary manslaughter and criminal trespass. The first charge is a felony, the second charge is a misdemeanor. On September 10, 2014, the first assistant director, Hillary Schwartz, was charged with the same 2 offenses. On March 9, 2015, Randall Miller pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter and criminal trespass in accordance with a plea bargain, which resulted in the charges being dropped against his wife. He was sentenced to 2 years in the county jail and 8 years of probation. In addition, he was not allowed to function as a director or supervisor on any production until he completed his sentence. Jay Sedrish pleaded guilty as well. He received 10 years of probation. He did not get any jail time. On the next day, March 10, 2015, Hillary Schwartz pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter and criminal trespass. Just like Jay, she received no jail time and 10 years of probation. On March 23, 2016, Randall Miller was released from jail. He only served just over a year due to accumulating good time. In July 2017, the family of Sarah Jones was awarded $11.2 million in civil damages. Liability was divided between CSX, the paper products company, which owned the land where the tracks were located, Randall, his wife Jody, Jay, and Hillary. In 2019, prior to the completion of his probation, Randall directed a movie titled Higher Grounds. A hearing was held to determine if he violated his probation by doing so. Again, Randall was not permitted to function as a director or supervisor on any production until his sentence was complete. This includes completing probation. Randall indicated that he believed he was allowed to direct as long as he was not responsible for safety. He misunderstood the probation agreement. The judge ruled in Randall's favor, finding that Randall did not knowingly violate the terms of his probation. The judge offered Randall a stern warning, however, indicating that Randall was definitely not supposed to function as a director. There should be no confusion moving forward. On March 15, 2025, Randall Miller's convictions were cleared from his record. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. Some people look at this tragedy and appreciate how terrible it was, but do not believe that directors and producers should have been convicted of any crimes. They look at this situation as an industrial accident. Mistakes were made, but nothing that rose to the level of criminal action. I can appreciate this perspective. For many years, fatalities on movie sets were largely treated as accidents. However, it is important to look at the specific circumstances and judge each case independently. In the state of Georgia, felony involuntary manslaughter occurs when a person causes the death of another person while committing an unlawful act that is not a felony. If they committed an unlawful act that was a felony, the appropriate charge would be felony murder, a much more serious offense. In the Midnight Rider disaster, Randall and the other offenders made a number of decisions which could be considered negligent. For example, they moved forward filming the scene knowing that the railroad tracks were active. Just an hour before the fatal collision, they watched 2 CSX trains cross the railroad trestle bridge. Randall claimed that he knew about these 2 trains, but there would be no other trains crossing on that day. In reality, Randall did not know this. He was lying to his crew. The perpetrators knew that the production had been denied permission to be on the bridge and that by being there, they were trespassing. The production was denied permission in January 2014 and again in February 2014, less than 2 weeks before filming started. Randall was aware that if a train was spotted coming down the tracks, the crew would only have about 60 seconds to get to safety. No reasonable person would have believed this was enough time, and in fact it was not enough time, as evidenced by 6 crew members being trapped on the railroad trestle bridge walkway. In light of all these poor decisions, it's clear the perpetrators were negligent and therefore guilty of involuntary manslaughter. Item number 2. When the crew members were alerted to the presence of the train, many of them tried to save the cameras and to move the heavy metal bed off the tracks. Saving the cameras was probably a financial consideration. Moving the bed was more about the fear that the train would derail upon striking the bed. The priority, of course, should have been saving human life. Every crew member should have run directly off the bridge. Based on the video that was recorded of the incident, it looks like the attempt to move the bed off the tracks actually blocked some crew members from getting off the bridge, like the bed was in their way. At the very least, moving the bed slowed the crew members down. Another critical mistake was made prior to this. As I mentioned, 2 CSX trains crossed the railroad bridge about an hour before the collision. These trains passed by the crew, who were standing on both sides of the tracks. The operators of those trains were obligated to contact dispatchers and report this activity. They were supposed to report all trespassers, but they failed to do so. If they had reported their observation, the tragedy would have been avoided. Item number 3. Some people are upset that Randall Miller was able to get his record cleared. How is it possible that a person convicted of a felony and a misdemeanor can find themselves without a criminal record? Randall was able to get his record cleared under a law called the Georgia First Offender Act. In the state of Georgia, when a record is cleared using this act, it is referred to as an exoneration. Once an exoneration takes place, it means that the conviction never existed as far as the law is concerned. If a person whose record has been cleared is asked if they have ever been convicted of a crime, they can truthfully answer no. Again, that crime was never committed. This process is similar to what other states have. Programs like this have many different names, including probation before judgment and deferred adjudication. They are considered a standard part of the criminal justice system and are not unusual in any way. The Georgia First Offender Act has several restrictions. For example, it can only be used one time. It cannot be used if a person has ever been convicted of a felony in any U.S. jurisdiction. And several offenses are excluded, meaning if a person was convicted of one of these offenses, they cannot be exonerated through this process. For example, murder, armed robbery, kidnapping, certain offenses involving sex, and driving under the influence. In my opinion, programs like the Georgia First Offender Act are a good idea. There should be a way to get criminal records expunged for most offenders. Among other problems, a felony conviction or even a misdemeanor conviction can severely limit somebody's work opportunities. It is unnecessary for society to penalize people forever for their mistakes. People can change over the course of their lives, and so should a criminal record. I'm not surprised that Randall Miller was able to get his conviction cleared. He had the same right to do this as anyone else in a similar situation. What surprised me regarding Randall's behavior was how he directed a movie while on probation, claiming not to understand the conditions of his probation. If he had been found guilty of violating his probation, he probably would have not been eligible for exoneration. Randall took a massive risk. That's how desperately he wanted to be involved in the movie business. One would think that before directing a film, Randall would have made certain that he understood the conditions of his probation. Maybe he should have read the probation agreement a few times. He could have easily obtained clarification before producing a movie, even if he needed to contact an attorney to make sure he understood the conditions. I find Randall's behavior to be particularly ironic in light of statements that he made while defending his actions. For instance, one time when he was under oath, he repeatedly said, "It's not my job," when referring to the safety responsibilities for the production. After repeatedly saying this, he ran out and found another job. Now moving to my last item, number 4. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. The misbehavior in this case strikes a familiar chord for people who have dealt with film production crews. There is the sense that some directors and producers are arrogant and tend to take over areas where they are filming. They regularly block vehicle and pedestrian traffic, demand that people move out of their way, and otherwise interfere with lawful activity. They believe that the film, or whatever project they are working on, is more important than anything else in the world. The grandeur of a movie surpasses the significance of boring and uneventful lives that regular people have. Residents near a filming location should be honored to even be in the same vicinity as great visionaries. They should happily accept interference to their daily routines for the greater good of society. This pretentious and condescending point of view can lead to reckless behavior. I think that's what happened in this case. Randall Miller simply believed his film was more important than following the law, more important than safety, more important than common sense, and more important than the lives of his crew. Something as insignificant as a train that weighs thousands of tons should come to a stop for someone as great as Randall. The train should have scurried away out of fear when confronted with his magnificent presence. The laws of physics should have cowered upon viewing Randall's unparalleled talent as a director. Instead, predictably, the train slammed into the movie set, causing death and injury. The train's cameo of destruction was 100% avoidable. Even if Randall was determined to break the law, he could have at least positioned people a few miles in both directions on the railroad track to alert the crew when a train was coming. He did not even bother to take the most elementary of safety precautions. Directors like Randall Miller are able to get away with offenses like this in part because people get starstruck. There's something about a movie that seems magical. In reality, they should not. Randall is not special. He does not have some incredible talent. Just like most directors, he could be replaced in an instant. His only talent was converting a biographical drama into a horror movie. Those are my thoughts on Randall Miller and the Midnight Rider train collision. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon.